So the last time we talked about coming together in one accord, right, and in one agreement, because I believe that there is strength, there is safety, and there is power when we come together in one accord, right, in doing, especially to do the purpose and the will of God. Because as we read, in Psalms 133, that when the unity of the brethren comes together, the Lord will naturally command his blessing, and the blessing for life forevermore. So I believe that it was for that very same principle, when the 12 tribes, when they assembled themselves, when they agreed in one accord and one heart to cross over the Jordan River to go into the promised land, and so that they could possess each and every one of the city that the Lord gave unto them, because they were with one single heart and one single mind, and in one agreement they went in together. Even though the 2.5 tribe has already secured, their piece of land, their possession before they cross over, but yet, knowing that every one of the 12 tribes must be given, located their very own possession. So therefore, with one single heart, they went over and across. And that allows the very move of God into their midst, the very move of God that strengthened them, that enabled them, that fight for them on their behalf. So therefore, I believe that this principle is very important for us, as a church, even as we go forward. Today, I want to bring up a second factor, which I believe it is very core to our Christian faith, which is very fundamental to our Christian faith. And I believe that has to do with love, right? And I entitled it as, Did You Learn to Love? Did you learn to love? In 1975, we know that it was mentioned, it was recorded. I believe that many of us may know about this U.S. prophet. His name, the late U.S. prophet, his name is Bob Jones, right? He is a well-respected prophet in the U.S. because, he received very accurately from the Lord, and he has ministered, and he has indeed, spoken in many of the people's lives and prophesied over them as well. And, on August the 8th, 1975, he experienced death. And he stood before the Lord in heaven. And as he stood in line awaiting entrance into the heart of Jesus, he heard the Lord asking the same question to each person ahead of him. Did you learn to love? Did you learn to love? And because it wasn't the time for Bob Jones to cross over to heaven, and what the Lord did was that he sent him back with one single message, to the leaders and the body of the end-time church, with this simple message: did you learn to love? Why would you think that the Lord would want to ask you and I, if we were to step into heaven, did you learn to love? I believe that this is the very nature of God, right? Because the Bible tells us that God is love, that he who does not love does not know God. So therefore, it is only natural that as God's people, we are to manifest, we are to love one another, and we are to love our neighbors. Because Jesus was approached and asked, what is, Rabbi, teacher, tell us, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus went on to say, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And he said the second is like the first. You are to love your neighbor as yourself. So it is a second greatest commandment that is given to us. And therefore, if we are not able to express that, if we are not able to live that out, then how could we call ourselves to be the children of God? Because the Bible says that, if you have not seen God, right, but yet you hate your brothers, then how can you say that you love God? And not only that, Jesus, the night before he was betrayed, he told his disciples that a new commandment I give to you: love one another as I have loved you. Why? Because that's so that the world will know that you are my disciples. So therefore, this very essence of love must need to be expressed in us. And I believe that this is very fundamental, in the coming days, for us to be able to see the great harvest that is to come. I believe that we have to make manifest this element of love to the people that is around us, firstly in the body of Christ, and before we go out even into the community, to be able to express God's love to the people. It is only when we undergirt everything that we do by love. Because in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, just when Paul was listing down, all the gifts of the Spirit in chapter 12, he suddenly paused, and wrote in chapter 13, love. What is love? To let us know that even though you may be able to perform the greatest miracle on earth, but yet if you do it without love, it would mean nothing. It would amount to nothing. Whatever we may attain to do, that we desire to do, that we want to do, and to reach out to the people, but yet if that wasn't done with love, it would amount to nothing. Therefore, it is very important for us to consider this, because we are called to lay down our life for our brethren. And in a book called Keep Your Love On, by this author called Danny Silk, who also authored the book called Culture of Honor, he says that many people think that if they are using their spiritual gifts, they must be having a relationship with God. But gifts can be used outside of connection. Gifts can be used without love, right? Gifts can be used because the gifts and calling of God is irrevocable. You may not even have a connection, a relationship with God, but you can still be able to use the gift that was given to you and I. So therefore, it's important that we need to be able to know that we are having a relationship with Jesus, that we are having a love relationship with Him before we could step out to do anything. Why? Because Jesus says in Matthew 7, he says that on that day, many will come to Him and say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you, depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. If we do not have that relationship with Jesus, if we are not able to love people, then whatever we may do may not be counted for anything. And in that book, Dennis Silk also says that our spiritual training and growth can only occur in the context of relationship, which is true, right? We cannot learn love in a classroom setting. It has to be learned in the context of relationship. You have to be where the rubber meets the road. It is where we will need to be able to, encounter with people, be able to minister to people, and be able to express love to them in the tangible way. It cannot be done, either through the internet or even in a classroom setting. And so therefore, it was for that very reason that he, together with, the members of the church and also the students that come to attend their school, the ministry school, each week they will go out to bless the city of Redding, California, with prayer, with practical ministry for the homeless and the addicts and on the street, people living in halfway homes, jail inmates, and poverty-stricken families. And because of that, because of the expression of love, love is changing the city of Redding. Redding used to be a little wary of our church outreaches, but they have come to receive them and gratefully acknowledge the benefits we are offering. Did we learn to love? In order to be able to love at all is to be vulnerable. C.S. Lewis said that in order for us to be able to love, we need to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. Because we could open up ourselves to hurt, we could open up ourselves to pain, we could open up ourselves to rejection. Right? Because hurting people often hurt others as a result of their own pain. So very often, if someone is rude or inconsiderate, we can almost be certain that they carry with them unresolved issues inside. How then can we learn to love? At this juncture, I'd like us to examine together three of Jesus' disciples, how that he put himself into a vulnerable position and be able to express his love to his disciples even to the very end. And they are none other than Judas Iscariot, the one that is to betray him. These are people we trusted but betrayed us eventually. And then the second is Simon Peter, the people who fail us. How then are we to love them? And Thomas, who stayed away from us, even though Thomas has been with the 12 all this while. Because when Jesus came to appear before the tent, Thomas was missing from the midst. People who stayed away from us, how do we then learn to love? Judas Iscariot, we know that he is one of the chosen of the 12 apostles, chosen by God to be with Jesus for 3 years, traveled together, ate, witnessed all that Jesus taught and did. And not only that, he went out to preach the kingdom of heaven and also healing the sick and cleansing the lepers, raising the dead and casting out demons. Jesus would have treated Judas the same way as one of his very own, I believe. Jesus knew that Judas will be the one that will finally betray him. How could you and I deal with someone if we are in Jesus' shoes? We would have probably keep our distance. We could have chucked this person aside, cold storage the person, treat them with contempt, ignore and don't bother to give them attention. until they automatically choose to leave. I believe that do happen, somewhere out there in the marketplace, when you know that someone is going to betray you, you will want to put a stop to that. You will want to discard this person away. But let us look at how did Jesus love Judas Iscariot, even in spite of the fact that he's going to betray him. At that Last Supper that Jesus had with the 12, Jesus has placed Judas Iscariot at the seat of honor next to him on his left hand. Do you remember? Because Jesus says that, you will know who the betrayer is when I will dip this bread and feed it to him. So Judas Iscariot was on the left side of Jesus, seated at the seat of honor. So you can see how much love Jesus places, on Judas to express his love for him, hoping that he would change his mind, hoping that he would experience that love coming forth from him. And not only that, Jesus handed him, sharing a piece of the bread with him personally. Sharing food with someone carry an implication of friendship and peace in the ancient day. Judas accepted the bread, but he rejected the friendship. And not only that, at that very moment of the betrayal, when Judas came up to him, and giving the signal, coming up to Jesus to kiss him, that is where he's signaling to the soldiers to come and seize him. Jesus didn't call him, "You betrayer," but rather he says, "Friend." Friend is someone that Jesus said that discloses the very, inner thoughts that you have to a friend. Jesus chose to call Judas his friend, even though he is a betrayer. How would you and I love someone who betrayed us? Are we able to release forgiveness, to release blessing? Simon Peter, people who fail us. Peter stood up so strongly when Jesus said that, you all will fall away because of me. Peter says, "No, even if all fall away on account of you, I will never." But in the end, we knew that he denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times. How would you and I deal with people who fail us? Given up hope on them? Don't waste time on them. Let them go. Be angry or to put them to shame. But how did Jesus love Simon Peter even to the very end? When Simon Peter, at the 3rd time, at the crow of the cock, the rooster, that Jesus turned around and looked at Peter with the eyes of compassion. It was then that Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he has said to him, "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and wept bitterly. Jesus chose to show compassion to Peter. And not only that, when Jesus was resurrected, the first thing he told the people, "Go, tell his disciples, and specifically Peter, that he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him as he said to you. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, it was recorded for us that he appeared to Cephas, which is Peter, and then to the 12. In other words, he chose to appear himself first to Peter before revealing, before talking to the rest of the apostles. So you could see that how much, Jesus showed compassion on Peter, how much he really loved him, and how much he has places his hope on him. And we know that in the Word, in the Bible, that Jesus restored him, restored Peter back, and also offered him the opportunity to affirm back his love for him. How would you and I love someone who failed us? Will we desert them? Will we give up hope on them? And finally, Thomas, people who stayed away from us. Thomas is definitely one of the 12. Jesus appeared to the rest of the apostles in the upper room when they were gathered together. But Thomas was nowhere to be found. For whatever reason, Thomas didn't gather together with the 12. We do not know. Was it because that he was about to leave the whole group and to go back to his own business? Or was it because he has other kind of calculated move that he kept it to himself and would not want to associate anymore with the 12? And when it was told to him that Jesus has risen, he told that the other disciples say to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands and print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." I will not believe. But how did Jesus respond? Jesus personally appeared. He made a personal appearance for Thomas. When they were gathered together again and where Thomas was in their midst, Jesus came around and personally come before Thomas and says, "Reach your hand, your finger here, and look at my side. And reach your hand here and put it on my side." Would we be humble enough to personally reach out to those who would leave us, reject, who would stay away from us? So how do we learn to love? So I like to give us a moment. I believe that when you come in, you are given a slip of paper. I like us now to consider, is there anyone that we need to forgive? Is there anyone that we need to show love? Is there anyone that we need to show compassion? Anyone that we have trusted but has betrayed us? Anyone that has disappointed us? Anyone who has failed us? Anyone who has stayed away from us and has brought us pain? So I'd like to give us a moment to consider if there be anyone that you would like to forgive. I'd like us to write it down and to release a blessing to the individual, and after that to tear it out, knowing that Jesus would have forgiven, that Jesus would have loved the person even to the very end, and Jesus would have personally come up to the person and ministered to him. So shall I invite the worship team to come back and to minister us with a closing song as we pen down, as we write down who are the people that disappoint us, who are the ones that we want to release a blessing of forgiveness, of compassion, of love.